Well, I guess we can get started. Good evening and welcome to the Brookline League of Women Voters virtual discussion on May town meetings warrant articles 13 and 14. I'm Diana McClure, chair of the steering committee of the League of Women Voters of Brookline, whose members also include Shana Pena and Felina Silver. Brookline Interactive Group, BIG, is live streaming and televising this conversation on both channels, as well as recording it for viewing on the BIG website within the next couple of days. The mission of the League is voter education and civic engagement. In other words, making democracy work. We are nonpartisan and always provide balanced information on topics of civic interest. Warrant Article 13, submitted by our first speaker, Roger Blood, on behalf of the Housing Advisory Board, will discuss the zoning amendment to encourage creation of more accessory dwelling units. Warrant Article 14, submitted by the Zero Admissions Advisory Board and presented here by ZIAB's chair, Wendy Stahl, is a zoning article to reduce barriers to electrification, specifically to allow for easier installation of energy-saving devices such as heat pumps and EV chargers in Brookline's densest neighborhoods. The League's policy is always to present both sides of an issue. In this case, Linda Olson-Pelkey, town meeting member, Precinct 17, and member of the advisory board, will present the status of amendments and any continuing concerns as town meeting approaches. Roger will go first to discuss Warrant Article 13 for 10 to 15 minutes, followed by Linda to discuss concerns, amendments, and any issues that will be hopefully resolved before town meeting starts on May 28th. There will be a limited time for questions. We will then move on to Warrant Article 14, when Wendy Stahl will provide an explanation, including some of the amendments accepted by the petitioners. Linda Olson-Pelkey will add some comments regarding the concerns raised during the review process, followed by your questions until we adjourn at 8 p.m. So, Roger, would you like to start?
Thank you, Diana, and thanks to the League of Women Voters for inviting us to have this discussion, and hopefully some interesting enlightenment about the HAB's proposed warrant article to encourage more production and provision of housing through the use of accessory dwelling units in single-family homes. I'm going to share some slides with you, and hopefully we'll have time for some questions and answers at the end. Next slide, please. A little bit of background. The HAB originally brought an article to authorize ADUs in single-family homes back in 2019. And when that article was adopted, we expected at least some perhaps a couple of dozen or dozens of ADUs to result over the first few years. We were happy to see the article pass, disappointed that nothing has happened in the 4 years since. By nothing, I mean only a few ADUs have actually been a result of the article passing. The article, the original article, contained a number of restrictive provisions. And the HAB is now returned to consider how the article could be streamlined and be made more user-friendly for homeowners that wish to create an ADU. In the meanwhile, on a kind of a parallel track, which we won't spend time on this evening, the governor has introduced a very large housing bill, which has a small section that includes provisions relating to ADUs that the state would also like to encourage through as of right and provisions that would override the rights of cities and towns to do their own advancement of ADUs at the local level. This article, Article 13, is likely to be the first of two bites at this apple, because if and when the state acts, whatever they do, we would need to follow through and bring our local bylaw in line with the state. Next slide, please. The intent of why the town has adopted this as a policy, the encouragement of ADUs, is the same now as it was in 2019. Families can be given flexibility that when they live in homes as their needs change over their lifetimes, and particularly allowing older adults to have some options for, as we know, the term aging in place, for which many wish to do. At the same time, more ADUs would give some housing choices in the town that don't presently exist, while very much having a commitment to retaining the residential character of our existing residential neighborhoods. ADUs are typically lower cost than full market rate rental housing because they're less costly to produce, and also the owner of a home that would rent a portion of their home in the form of an ADU normally will do that below market and want to have a continuing relationship and confidence in whoever's renting the ADU that's in their home. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. I'm going to go through very quickly here some of the specific changes that are being proposed, which I believe Linda and we've had a number of discussions together over the last few weeks. We've reached agreement on all but one of the provisions that are being offered here. The maximum size of an ADU in a home as of right would be 900 square feet in relation to the previous 750 square feet. And that maximum size limit is determined as the lesser of the square footage you're seeing here, or a percentage of the total building floor area of the house, and that is being increased from 30 to 40%. That's as of right. The special permit on an ADU is not going to be changed, and it will remain at 950 square feet. But again, the special permit would be the lesser of that square footage, or 40% of the total home's building area, floor area. Next slide, please. The owner occupancy requirement, which an ADU, most people think of an ADU as typically associated with, is going to be relaxed slightly. Right now, it's an absolute requirement, and no one can apply for an ADU unless they have simultaneously attested 8 ways to Sunday that they are an owner occupant when they are applying, and will continue to be so. What we're doing here is relaxing the multiple ways in which an owner would be required to provide the documentation of owner occupancy, and rely entirely for this documentation on our assessor's residential exemption database, which is public and which is highly monitored by the assessor to assure its accuracy over time. And as many of you probably know, if you are an owner occupant and get the assessor's concurrence on your status, you will get a significant break on your assessed valuation and your annual tax bill. Also significant in what we are relaxing, the 2019 bylaw had a requirement that if you wanted as a homeowner to create an ADU, you had to owner occupy the property for at least 5 years, or what we've called a look back period. If the town's policy is to encourage the creation and use of ADUs to meet the needs that you've seen, then there's really no reason to have an owner occupant who bought a house last year be denied or have to wait 4 more years to come to the building department and request to produce an ADU. Next slide, please. I mentioned that all applicants at present have to be a certified owner occupant at the time they apply. The article as offered by the HAB would allow a very limited expansion of that, and when the applicant would come to the building department, they would have to identify as an owner occupant, or if not, as an owner investor. And at that point of application, all of them would have to agree in writing to comply with all of the terms of the ADU bylaw. If the applicant is not an investor owner, they would be required to do one of 2 things in order at the point where they get their approval, their first building permit. They would either have to sell the finished ADU or finished upgrade of the home, including an ADU, after it's completed within 24 months. And if they don't do that, they would and wanted to continue renting the ADU and possibly the home, they would be required to deed restrict the ADU as affordable to a moderate income renter for at least 15 years. And if they didn't resell the home or deed restrict the unit, the building commissioner would be required. Most enforcement is discretionary. In this instance, it would be required that the ADU certificate of occupancy would be revoked. Next slide, please. Just to take a moment or two more on this aspect, since it's the only portion of the proposed bylaw amendment where there is where Linda is proposing to amend it, and the town meeting will probably have a good debate or discussion about this before they decide which way to go. It's important for folks to understand that a single-family home is different than a multifamily home, and the value of the single-family home, with or without an ADU, is much greater to an owner-occupant purchaser and owner than it is to somebody who's in the business of running rental properties as a landlord. I won't go through the detail here, but with some extensive discussions with our assessor, he's looked at some examples and concluded that a homeowner and home ownership of a home with an ADU, or with or without, is a great deal more valuable to an investor to sell the home to an owner occupant than to try to keep it as an absentee rental owned property. Next slide, please. Several things that are prohibited in the current bylaw we are proposing to eliminate, just to make the bylaw a little more user friendly for those that want to do certain things that they would prefer one way versus another. We're eliminating the current prohibition that an ADU can't have the ADU cannot have its own street facing entrance. We're eliminating the current prohibition that an ADU cannot have its own separate mailing address or a separate street-facing mailbox or mail slot. And we're eliminating the current prohibition that an ADU can't have separate utility metering or sub-metering. Next slide, please. This slide and what it says here is worth saying, even though it's not something that's being proposed for a change in Warrant Article 13. It's language that is remaining in the bylaw. An owner that wants to create an ADU can, only with a special permit, do so by adding to their existing single-family home. And a special permit is a little bit heavier lift than just as of right, which they can do if they're doing the ADU completely within the so-called envelope or limits of the existing structure. And I won't take time to go through the details of this, but it's basically some language that the planning board would look at in issuing a special permit for assurance, as much for neighbors as for the applicant, that any addition to a single-family home is going to be in keeping and have compatibility design-wise with the existing home. Next slide, please. Also, again, to eliminate current restrictions which don't seem necessary, especially if we want to encourage non-intrusive ADUs in our residential neighborhoods. We've eliminated the minimum age of a property eligible. Currently, it had to be at least 5 years old. However, the owner will have to agree to continuing compliance with all requirements of the ADU bylaw, and annual certifications are no longer going to be required. One point about the first bullet here: existing garages are allowed to be converted to an ADU under the existing bylaw. We're not proposing any change there. I don't believe any have actually happened, but the garage, if it were to be converted, would have to be at least 5 years old. Next slide, please. And finally, the building commissioner who enforces all zoning bylaw, all of the zoning bylaw, including ADUs, he's not as motivated for the creation of more housing as the HAB is looking for, and or providing a wider range of needs for the homeowner. What his main concern is safety of existing buildings or what's going to get built. The assessor estimates that there's about 150 odd unauthorized ADUs that may or may not have not been inspected and may not comply with the building codes and safety. So this provision includes the fact that an encouragement or incentive that the owners of existing ADUs come out of the shadows and get their units legalized. And we know that at least one of the few that have been created so far has been the legalization of an existing unoccupied unit. So with that, I would encourage questions and answers when we finish this session. And thank you very much again. Next slide, please. And there's only one word on it, but we'll hold the questions until the sessions are completed. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Roger. Linda?
Good evening, everybody. Can everyone see my slides?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for having me, Diana, the League of Women Voters. It's a bit rough the day after the election, but hey, we're all here, right? We can't get enough of this town business. So I am here to talk about an amendment that I am proposing to what Roger just presented. And actually, as soon as we're done with this meeting, I will be, and so will Roger, joining the advisory committee who is going to be discussing this amendment and this warrant article this evening. My name is Linda Olson-Pelkey. I'm a town meeting member from precinct 17, and I am on the advisory committee on the land use, zoning, and sustainability subcommittee. So first I want to just give you a little bit of background to think about this. So as Roger said, we did pass an ADU bylaw in 2019. It applied to single family dwelling units, which were owner occupied. And I'm showing you this map because I've heard some people talk about, oh, well, we're going to get a whole bunch more new housing that is transit oriented development that's near our businesses, et cetera, et cetera. But on this map, the single family areas are colored yellow. So there are a few that are near transit, which would be Cottage Farm, Longwood. Down here, this is Pill Hill. Corey Hill is a bit further. And then Fisher Hill, you might say that's transit oriented, but the rest of this vast area is not. Although I will just mention that a single family home could be in any zone, and they would be eligible for the conversion to allowing an ADU. So first, we really don't know why ADUs haven't really taken off. We haven't really spent a lot of time talking to homeowners and asking them about what they might like to do and what things they saw as an impediment. I think the HAB kind of approached this as we're going to try to eliminate as many requirements as possible. And as Roger said, yes, the state legislature is considering Governor Healy's bill that includes something about by right ADUs. It's being discussed and debated right now. And we have heard coming out of these debates that there is some pushback from local communities. I have two quotes here. One is from a select board member in Chelmsford who is just not happy about forcing another top-down state level mandate onto local communities and prohibiting them from actually regulating these in the way that makes sense for their town. For instance, in our town, I think because we have lot sizes that go from 40,000 square feet to 5,000 or 4,000 square feet, that we really should be tailoring this to be more compatible with each different type of zone rather than a blank same regulation for every size of lot. The Lowell Planning Board chair spoke up as well and said he saw the investor owner option as really a de facto two-family housing zone and changing our single-family areas to two families by allowing the by right and the rental of both the ADU and the house. So that's just a sample of some of the criticisms. Just as over this weekend, we found yet another mistake in the drafting of the bylaw. I think we fixed it, but I think it would be fair to say that it would be not an unreasonable position to take. I'm not advocating for this, but I'm just putting it out there that it's not a crazy idea to say, why not wait until we find out what the state is going to do? Because you heard Roger say we're going to have to come back and fix it again anyway. So maybe we need to take a little more care here. At the advisory public hearing, we did have the assessor there, and we asked him about the value that an ADU would add to a property. And he told us that it would be approximately $250,000, which, when you think about new growth and trying to grow our tax base and being able to tax in a way that pays for the services brought by those housing units, I question whether that is going to be happening in this case. It's true that the market will value these properties eventually, and this is the write-off of the bat valuation, but there it is nonetheless. I would say that with allowing the owner investor, we are really creating two-family zoning in our single-family zones. And in my way of thinking, I think that is such a large change for owners and residents in our neighborhoods that they need to be consulted. They need to be brought into a process to discuss their concerns and how they would like to see this, and they have not had that opportunity. And I think we should be able to spend a little time assessing what we think the impacts of this bylaw change would be from a fiscal perspective, from where do we have capacity to add greater housing units, et cetera, et cetera. So what is my proposed amendment? It is quite simply to remove the option of allowing investors to build ADUs. We would retain, which is already in the bylaw, we would retain the requirement for owner occupancy. And that's for a whole lot of reasons. Mostly because I think it helps us define and retain those attributes of ADUs that we find really valuable and helpful in terms of giving people options for housing in their own homes. So ADUs, in my mind, are smaller units. They are in an owner-occupied building, and this provides a type of housing and a relationship with your landlord, tenant, owner, family member, whoever it is, that does create naturally occurring affordable housing. I have talked to some folks who have created ADUs, and they're quite proud of the housing they've been able to provide for different tenants in different situations, different states of need. And it's a really neighborly community building kind of relationship between that owner and their tenants. We do both include in our versions of this article a prohibition on short-term rentals. And so I'm going to start talking a little bit now about what I think is not good about allowing the investor units. And the first thing is, if you think about absentee landlords and what properties are like, sometimes, not always, obviously, there are good landlords and bad landlords, but we do often get in a situation with absentee landlords where the property is not maintained as well, or they are able to rent to many, many, many people, and there's disruptive behavior and not really neighborly behavior in our neighborhoods. And so I think we have a real problem now in our housing market with speculation and investors buying up properties. The MAPC did a study recently that showed that 1/5 of the housing that is being bought and sold in the greater Boston region is by investors, people who simply want to own a rental property to get that passive income, or they're flippers, or they just want to hold it as a way of parking their money somewhere. So they have found that these highly capitalized investors actually push traditional buyers out of the housing market and drive up the cost of housing in our area. And I don't think we really want to incentivize that or invite that into our neighborhoods. I've also heard that with the limited liability corporation business structures, it is often very difficult for folks like our building commissioner to identify who the real owners are and actually, correct situations that need to get corrected. So let's see, I guess we can go on to the
Now,
next
Linda,
one.
if you could,
Yes,
take
I'm
just a
almost
couple
done.
more minutes.
I'm almost done. Is that what you were trying to tell me, to hurry up? So this is what the actual, this is what the
Politely.
actual, this is what the actual amendment looks like.
Yep.
If you read through the HAB proposal, it's got a really huge section about how they're handling this owner investor idea. And this simplifies it. It puts it back the way that it was, but it incorporates the easy way to identify owners, which I've agreed with. So I think all the changes that were made about making things easier, removing onerous regulations, and clarifying some of the language, it actually needed clarifying. All of those things have been accomplished in both versions. And again, there's just one simple version. Mine removes the investor option. So I guess I will stop now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I definitely want to give enough time for warrant article 14. Maybe we could take one short question that would need to be answered in just a couple of minutes. I believe there's one for the speakers. Well, since we're not hearing that, we'll move on to warrant article 14. And Wendy Stahl, do you want to introduce yourself and just get going?
Hi, thank you. I'm going to share my screen. Oh, are you not allowing us to share sound by any chance? I would love to be able to share sound with my sharing of the screen. Otherwise, a video won't work that well. Anybody from Big can answer that?
I'm not sure. Why don't you just get started?
Okay. Well, okay. There won't be a video. Okay, so my name, oh, hold on. Sorry, I'll be right back. There's an emergency in my house. I'm so sorry. Hold
on. Steve Walter, is there any way you can activate the video on her presentation? I guess that's not going to work.
It has worked in other settings that she's presented at on Zoom. So
Okay,
I don't know why she's assuming it's not going to work. So
I don't know.
Okay. Okay, sorry about that. Children. I'm trying to press the share sound box and it's not letting me click it.
Available.
But that's okay. We just won't watch the video. Okay, you can see my screen? Okay, so I'm Wendy Stahl. I am the chair of the Zero Emissions Advisory Board. We worked closely with town staff in crafting this article. including town council, the building department, and particularly the planning department. But there's always room for improvement. And through the vetting process, one significant change has been adopted since this article was originally filed. And that is that the regulations here that I will describe will not apply to residential buildings of 7 units or more. Oh, sorry. The version I'm presenting today has been approved by every board it has come before. As a bit of context, the state has a legally binding mandate of reaching net zero carbon emissions by 2050. Brookline has committed to net zero by 2040, a short 16 years from now. The graphic here is from the state's 2050 Clean Energy and Climate Plan, and it shows the state's 4 key priorities for addressing our climate crisis. The first priority on the left in green is eliminating emissions from energy end uses, which essentially means we need to transition all our cars and buildings off burning fuels like gasoline, oil, and natural gas, and instead power them by electricity. It's pretty clear there's a lot to do. Big policy changes need to happen at both the state and national levels, but municipalities like Brookline can also make things a little easier. Over the last few months, the Zero Emissions Advisory Board has committed to focusing our priorities on removing roadblocks to climate action. This warrant article is one example of that. It's a way we can make it easier for those living in our dense neighborhoods to accomplish priority 1 of this graphic. So Warrant Article 15 essentially will allow for easier installation of electrification equipment in Brookline's densest neighborhoods by lowering the required setback from the lot line from 6 feet to 2 feet for all buildings except residential buildings of 7 units or more. What is electrification equipment? Essentially, it refers to heat pumps and EV chargers. Currently, mechanical devices such as heat pump condensers are considered accessory structures and are not permitted to be installed within 6 feet of side or rear lot lines. If a property owner would like to install a heat pump closer than 6 feet to their lot line, they must request a special permit and have a hearing in front of the planning board, followed by a hearing in front of the zoning board of appeals. The good news is that in recent years, everyone who has applied for a special permit for a heat pump has gotten one. The bad news is that the special permit process is inequitable. Many people end up hiring professional help to navigate the confusing and uncertain process of a special permit. Some particularly well-informed homeowners who also have free time elect to do this themselves, but the majority hire assistance of some kind. At the low end of cost, people can do some of the process themselves and only pay $1,000 for a land survey. And on the high end, they can pay up to $10,000 for the additional services of an engineer, architect, or lawyer. And the process takes 4 to 6 months. But it is only people who live in Brookline's less affluent, dense neighborhoods that have to endure these additional burdens. To meet our climate goal, it's necessary to transition every home to heat pumps. That's a tough ask. The way things are set up now, we're making a hard thing even harder, and we shouldn't be doing that when we're trying to save the world. Here are some examples of real situations where this has come up in Brookline. From these photos, you can see that these heat pump units can be fairly narrow and can be mounted on the ground or on a wall or even on a roof. So I don't think you're going to be able to hear this when I play it, but I will talk about it. We understand that people are concerned about noise. It's important to note that modern multi-stage and variable stage heat pumps, that's what you see on the right in this picture, are quieter than traditional older 1- and 2-stage air conditioners that you see on the left that we're all used to hearing around Brookline. We're confident that very few people will choose noisier 1- or 2-stage heat pumps, since Mass Save only provides financial incentives of up to $10,000 for heat pumps that are multi-stage or variable stage. This is because the newer technology is not only quieter, but also more energy efficient and less expensive to operate. You're not going to hear the sound, so I'm not going to press play, but I will describe that the traditional air conditioner, when you hear it, sounds like an air conditioner. And then this homeowner turns off the air conditioners and turns on the heat pump, and you can't hear it at all. Sorry that the sound isn't working. If the noise ends up being louder than expected, we have safeguards in place in our noise control bylaw. Our bylaw states that devices like heat pumps must be no more than 10 decibels louder than background noise day and night. But if the device makes a tonal sound like a whine, a hum, or a buzz, it cannot be more than 5 decibels above background noise. Now that's not very loud. If an installation is louder than that, the town can require that the unit be shut off until it is fixed and is in compliance with the noise bylaw. I'd like to finish with the fact that we're not the first. Somerville, Newton, and Wellesley have done this, citing equity concerns and a desire to make climate action easier. And take a look at that overwhelming vote count in Wellesley. And even Brookline approved this change already in the small residential district in the Harvard Street plan we approved last year. Since people have been concerned about noise, I reached out to these communities to see if there have been any noise complaints. All 3 of their building departments said that they were not aware of a single complaint. In other words, they have taken this for a test drive and proven that it's okay. Brookline can feel confident in removing this barrier at a time when there's so much that's hard about taking climate action. This change gives us a chance to make it just a bit easier and more equitable, and will allow us to move quicker towards our goal of 0 emissions. And that's it.
Thank you, Wendy. Linda, do you want to speak some, and then we can take Q&A?
Yeah,
for
I
both.
just want to kind of fill in a little bit about some of the debate that has been had, mostly at advisory about this article. There was a good discussion as well at the planning board. Wendy mentioned that it is not being applied by right in situations where it's a building with 7 units or more. And this was because of a concern about just the multiplication of units in side yards for larger multifamily buildings. I mean, 12 unit building could have 24 of these, and they could, under this bylaw, had been located in side yards in a giant row or whatever. And for some people, that didn't seem so ideal. So for those situations, they'd still have to go get a special permit. I'm glad that we've adjusted the cost on the special permits, but one thing I would still add is it is possible to download a plot plan of your land that you own from the Norfolk Registry of Deeds, and it doesn't cost you a thing. So I think you don't even need that if you're ambitious and want to go it alone. And there was a lot of talk about noise, and what the planning board members spoke about their experience of having discussions with abutters and having that benefit of looking at particular sites and asking people to move things around. I was actually happened to be there one night when they were doing this. And when they reviewed the Warrant article, we tried to sort of craft some language to make the building commissioner sensitive to those abutter type issues, but it turned out to be kind of impossible to craft generic enough language that wouldn't burden the building commissioner with too much liability, really, to be honest. And the other thing about the noise bylaw is, I don't know if we would qualify that noise as a buzz or a hum or tonal or whatever, but I think people need to realize that 10 decibels louder is a doubling or more than doubling of the level of noise. So I think it would have to be really outrageously loud for that to help anyone. So I hope this doesn't happen, but I think it's possible we could have annoyed neighbors without really an outlet to resolve the issue. And then I guess the neighbors will just have to speak to one another and try to work it out. But all in all, advisory did eventually, after talking about it for a long time, as we always do, adapted the bylaw, and we all think it's a good thing.
Okay, Wendy, do you want to respond to what Linda has said?
No, I think that she made the points that were made in the meetings, and as she said, in the end, advisory did support this article.
We do have a little bit of time where we could have Q&A, I think, on both warrant articles. I am not sure, Ernie, if you have received any questions. I'm seeing one that goes back to the first presentation, which Linda, perhaps you could answer. So I'll read this and then hopefully Ernie can handle some other questions that might come up. This is from David Trevitt. Individuals' finances are not being discussed. If homeowners need an ADU to help them afford to stay in their home, then where do they get the money to construct an ADU? On the electrification, and then, let's see. Okay, yeah, I can answer that. And then there's another question that would be for you, Wendy.
That's an interesting question. This is something that they would have to finance themselves. I mean, I would think a line of, a HELOC, a line of credit on your home or a second mortgage or any other kind of way of financing it. If you think it's in your best interest, financially or otherwise, to have an ADU, you're going to find a way to finance it. If not, you're probably going to move. So this is not about the town building housing. No, this is about individuals making accommodation in their home to do something different, to house a caregiver, to house an aging relative, to provide rental housing to help them pay their property taxes. It's but it is self-financed.
Okay, thank you. I know that we have, I believe, somebody else who wants to answer a question along that line, but let me finish with one for Wendy, and then we'll move to the other question. On the electrician issue, our son converted their whole house to heat pumps, and I think the cost was around $40,000. Why are we not discussing what individual homeowners would have to fund?
Well, that is a very good point. It's just beyond the scope of this specific warrant article. We are working on reducing barriers, and cost is a significant barrier. There are significant rebates that are available, but they are not high enough to cover the entire cost of this work. And that's why we're trying to remove every other barrier that we have power over, like the distance that it can be to your neighbor's property.
Okay, good, thank you. And Ernie, I think if you can give Felina the screen so she can ask a question. Felina? Felina, do you need to unmute?
Felina, what, are you able to put your question into the chat?
Well, we're waiting for this. One thought that I had before we came online here
She's all set.
was, is there any estimate of the number of ADUs that potentially might be built or, yes, in Brookline, Linda?
Well, what I can tell you is that there are approximately 4,500 single-family homes. And that the assessor told us that approximately 200 of those already have some kind of second unit in them. And it's kind of interesting because we've heard multiple estimates on this. We've heard about studies with what happened in Seattle, and they got hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of units, but they were allowing backyard cottages and investor owners and all kinds of things. And I have heard Roger say he thinks it's not going to be more than, a couple dozen a year. I think the truth is no one knows. No one knows. And I do think this is part of the reason why I feel personally that going to allowing the investors in is opening up a can of worms that we're not really prepared for. And we're not sure if that is going to be the thing that is going to suddenly cause expansions and second units and basically more market rate housing in our single family neighborhoods. And again, I just say what we're really trying to do is have this niche housing of an ADU, which is just a unique, naturally occurring affordable housing.
Mhm.
So we don't know. And, there just is no way to know.
Thank you. Well, I don't see any other questions. And if there are any closing statements that Linda, you would like to make around either of these warrant articles, or Wendy, if there's something additional that you would like to say.
I'm just very happy to be bringing this article, and I've been very happy with the support that it's garnered so far from all the boards and commissions we've brought it in front of. And I sincerely hope that town meeting will approve it as well, because I think it's sorely needed.
And Linda?
Well, I just would ask that people who are going to be voting on these issues check out their combined reports when they come out. And if there are particular questions, to reach out to either Roger or myself. And stay tuned, because as I said in the beginning, this is going to be debated right now at advisory as soon as I get over there. So it may be that the advisory committee adopts this amendment. We don't know yet.
Okay, well, thank you to the speakers and to those who have attended. We will have this recording available, and the league will plan to advertise it as much as it can, especially to the town meeting members. Yes, Wendy?
If anyone does want a link to that video, maybe they can email the league and I'll send it to them. Just the
Okay.
one I couldn't play today.
Oh, okay. That sounds good. If you can get that to me, we'll do it in one of our constant contact emails. Well, I'd like to thank everybody who's attended. And if you have any feedback or questions of other things that you would like us to do, or whatever's on your mind, you can email us at league@lwvbrookline.org. And we would love to have any of those who are in attendance who appreciate these kinds of meetings that we have. We're trying to educate the public around what's coming up before town meeting or issues in town. We'd love to see you join the League of Women Voters. And you can just Google League of Women Voters of Brookline, and you'll find our website and be able to do so. So without further ado, thank you to everybody for attending, and enjoy the rest of the evening. And Linda, I know you're going to be working hard in the next couple hours. Thank you to everybody.
Diana. Thanks to
Thank
the
you.
league.
Thank you.